and welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. I've got the director, Francis Annan. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Francis Annan. Yeah, it's cool.
Of Escape from Pretoria. Congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.
I thought it was fantastic. I just wanted to straight off ask you, how did this project fall into your lap?
Um, I met the producers in a pub in Pimlico in 2012, and I think they had the rights for quite a while, but then they lost the rights and got them back, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, they kind of asked what projects I was interested in. And I said I kind of like political thrillers and things with that kind of political, especially African politics and stuff. So they were like, oh, wow. Sort of Inside Out, Escape from Pretoria.
Yeah.
Flung that across, and so I read that, and then thought it was very interesting. I loved the attention to detail which Tim had chosen to imbue in the film.
Yeah.
And it felt like it could be quite thrilling, and it was there were kind of white guys you haven't really seen that much as part of the overall anti-apartheid struggle. So I thought that was interesting. It was a whites-only prison. That was interesting.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, it's the only white-only political prison in the world. There's nothing else like it. That's interesting. And yeah, it wasn't digging tunnels or climbing out of windows or so. It was something very technical and physical, and I kind of was intrigued by that. So that was about 2012, and it's just taken all this time to raise the money and cast and blah 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 blah.
So I've been to Pretoria a number of times. I was wondering, why wasn't it filmed in Pretoria or Johannesburg or in South Africa? I think it was filmed in Australia. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've been to obviously Pretoria, been to Cape Town, been to Johannesburg.
Yeah.
I'd got my set. I'd interviewed all the HODs. I'd got all my HODs. I'd got my casting director, DP, designer.
Yeah.
I got a great set at Cape Town Studios, all locked. We're very happy. And then the finance. There was a lot of people go to South Africa and with a pot of money already, and then just kind of take a tax break. But we needed some South African money itself, and there was some complications with some of the departments we were working with or whatever it is, and everything just suddenly ground to a halt. And then they realized, like in July, we're supposed to be prepping in January of the next year, and they realized, oh my gosh, like it's not going to work. Like, and if we have to wait for 9 months or whatever, then we're going to lose the window, and then all the pre-sales go, and then Dan's availability, because he was, he'd given us this period of time. We didn't want to mess him around either. He's very busy. So they were like, we're going to do something, because if we just sit here and do nothing, like the film's not going to get made.
Yeah.
The money from South Africa is not coming. So, so then, after weeping and gnashing of teeth, it was like, well, we need somewhere that has the right temperature. In January and February, it's going to work as doubling for, Cape Town and Pretoria. It needs to have that kind of post-colonial kind of, architecture thing going on. And they need to, whoever it is needs to like, I mean, it's Australia. That's the only country that can tick all these boxes, right? So I was a little bit kind of like, no, I wasn't a little bit. I went nuts. But there was no real option. It was either, do you want your film to be made or do you want it not to be made? And also it was a bit weird because there was actually when I looked into it further, there was actually quite a healthy precedent for films that were set in South Africa that was shot in Australia. There's a film called Disgrace, I think, with John Malkovich. He plays a South African lecturer. That was all pretty much all shot in Australia. And there's an older film called Breaker Morant, about the kind of Boer War, Boer time, shot in Australia. It's actually I didn't realize until after we shot that part of that film is shot in the same prison we shot in South Australia. And there's about 5 or 6 other films that are actually set in South Africa but shot in Australia. So I thought, okay, well, it's, I wanted to be a purist, but actually, there's a precedent there. And, in terms of the look and the architecture and the geography, it checks out. So, yeah, it was a decision that, had to be made in order for the film to be made, so.
Sure. Well, I have to congratulate you. It felt really authentic. We only knew it was Australia after we saw the credits roll. We thought, wow, that's quite a feat to, we're a bunch of South Africans here sitting, watching and thinking, oh, great. And for the most part, I thought the accents were mostly good. There were a couple
Yeah,
that we went, yeah, not sure where he's from.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but even Daniel, we thought his accent was great. How did he come to the project?
Yeah, thanks for that. We went to him around kind of autumn 2016, and went to his agent, and because obviously the agents tend to read the scripts first, kind of like a gatekeeper, and if they like it, then they say, okay, this is technically proficient, blah blah blah, onto my client. So she read it, loved it, which was very helpful. So she championed it and sent it to Dan. Dan read it like in a couple of weeks, super fast. We were thinking 1 month, 6 weeks, and then after that, he was like, I'm intrigued, let's meet. So we met. A couple of weeks later, we had a like long 3 hour chat. We got on really well, talking about politics and geopolitical affairs, and Australia, South Africa, and he was like, "Yeah, cool, I'm in. Let's do it."
Amazing.
Then they made a bit of a wilderness period where we kind of the financiers were, yeah, we managed to kind of find the right people basically, who knew what to do with the project, and then bang, it just kind of, from spring 2018 right through, it kind of got going. Obviously there was that huge glitch of having to move everything from South Africa to Australia, but yeah, aesthetically, I think it's done what it needs to, and because a lot of it is inside the prison. You have to get the exterior stuff right, but once you get everything inside the prison looking good, you can move it, to different places. But yeah, so he came on board then, and then we chatted. I went to his place and we chatted about scripts. He'd got to go, right, okay, scene 77, this, and he would be very incisive about what he thought we could do, and so on. So yeah, it was good. Good
Great.
process.
Fantastic. I just want to talk a little bit about the creativity of the shots. It's very tense. From the opening scene, you manage to create something that carries the viewer like right until the end shot, where it's one of those films you sit forward on your chair. But there's one particular shot which I've never seen before, and I just thought was brilliant. I wanted to ask you how you did it. The key lock scene where the camera's twisting around, and I just thought,
Yeah.
and you're almost inside, and I thought that's genius. I love that. How did you do that?
Okay, so with some technical ingenuity, so our grip, John Smith, was amazing. The first time I met him in November 2018 when I went for the recce, I said, I've got 5 shots for you. And I'd heard he loves making stuff and building things to get shots to work. I was like, yep, I'm your man. So that's one of the first things I kind of posited to him. And we didn't do any CG. There's some shots that, kind of other shots that, viewers will see. And you think, oh, is that CG? No, I tried to, because it was a very physical project. It was wood and glue and, files and chisels. I felt as if it'd be interesting if the camera and the techniques were physical. There was something about that connection which I thought would be helpful. And so, yeah, I knew that I wanted the camera to be inside the keyhole. I'd done the storyboards for it, and that a key should be brought towards frame, and then it should rotate. I didn't necessarily know how. So they had all these ideas. We could rotate the camera, and we could do this, and we could rotate that, and blah blah blah. But we worked out that we only really needed the keyhole to rotate. So he made a sort of snoot on the lens. That didn't work. So he managed to get a special head, a special sort of tripod head, which could rotate 360 degrees. You could, rather than just panning left and right, it could actually rotate. We got that. We were able to. Then we had the keyhole was actually flat, so the keyhole didn't move. That idea didn't work, so we didn't have we just had a flat keyhole. And then the last thing we needed to do, which was we planned it earlier, which the perspective, because Dan had to come and run straight at camera and then bring a key and put it in front of the lens. And obviously, if it has a small key, it's not going to work. So they made a false perspective key. The real keys were, about sort of that, but quite big. So we had to make a key that was about that big, huge, and then it tapered off. So it was when you look at it sideways, it was like a very small, like a big cone. So it started very small and then got bigger to about that size. It was huge. So when you actually face that first, face on, everything works out. His hand seems right in relation to the front of it. It's an old school trick, but we need to do that. So the combination of this kind of false perspective key and the angle that Dan had to run at it and this kind of camera thing meant we were able to do that in one group. And then I also wanted the door to push open. So they were able to sort of mount all of that onto the door. So after they rotated the camera, you could just push the entire door back and the camera would move with it.
Fantastic. That's so good.
Yeah.
So talking about the very physicality of the film, what was the hardest day on filming this? There must have
Oh,
been, or maybe many.
the hardest day was all 29 days. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, the first AD, Brad would look at me and would be like, what is this is ridiculous. Like, every day was like, there was no like, oh, this is a cool day, just like a couple of pickups. And I was, visually trying to really push things. I mean, the opening sequence, I should have had at least 2 days, 2.5 days. I had a day. I had to shoot, scenes that were at the very beginning of the film before they entered the prison and the ending of the film on the same day. It was crazy. But what was interesting is, I think on this film, the filmmaking process and the intensity of it was always good. There was never a moment where that freneticism and that kind of franticness wasn't actually helpful to the performances or to the mood on set. So I was happy that we were able to always fold every situation into, the kind of tension, because the whole thing's tense. Are you going to get caught? Is he going to come around the corner? Are we going to make it in time? Are you going to pick the thing up? And so that was useful. But yeah, every day was crazy. Every day, before Ian Hart had to go back, I had like 3 massively important scenes I had to shoot with him, and we had 2 sets, and we sort of made 2 matching sets, and I was literally actually running between the sets, and 2 cameras would be in each set, and then we'd have both actors. I'd have Ian Hart in one set doing something, and then I'd have Dan in the other set doing pickups for something else, and I'd say, right, clear that set, move it to this day, right, get him off there, do his makeup for scene, whatever, get him in, okay, right, it was just nuts. But that was good because you could feel that, I think, in the performances. Some of the stuff you see is actual, and they're not acting, they're actually, there's 15 minutes to shoot a shot, and you can feel it, it's good.
Was there anything that you didn't get time for, or that you would have liked to have had in the film?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, without giving too much away, about a week into the production, the kind of construction budget blew up, it went over, and so I lost some of my overtime. They call it, if you're shooting for a certain period of time and you need to shoot for a bit longer, you have to pay the crew, and often productions have money, for a few days to do that. I lost all of that, so I could not go over schedule. Otherwise, the whole budget would fall apart. So that was quite stressful. But then also, in order to help us to recover the ground that had been kind of taken with building some of the sets, it was like, well, you may have to actually cut some scenes so that they don't have to build those sets, and that will help you to, if you can do that, then you can just carry on. And so there was a whole sequence where they basically make it to a certain part in their kind of test run, and somebody accidentally puts on a light to see better. And there's a guard outside, and the guard is walking along the path, and he turns around just as they turn the light off, and you see it all in one shot. You see him turning, and the light off in the background, and fun little sequence. I had to cut all of that.
Painful.
So there's things like that, which they're just like knives in the heart, but we got there.
Well, I think it's a wonderful film. I think it's very interesting, especially on the budget that you've had to work with, and that it's filmed in Australia. I think you've done a really great job. What would be the dream job for you next? What would you love to do?
Well, on this film, the thing that there was lots of politics in terms of not making the film, but I mean, in the film is about politics and things. Some of that I had to sort of give up. There was, a lot of interesting character elements and relationships, again, because of time, because of a range of different things, commerciality, blah, blah, blah. I had to give it up. But the one thing I knew that I not only could do, but I had to do, so the film actually had some, thing that you can say, okay, the film does this really well, was the tension. And that's there in the book. It's there in the way they recant when the real characters, Tim and Stephen, when they recant the stories, how do you hold it together, for something so tense? So that's true in the sense that the tension is true to the story. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put all my eggs in that basket, and also I wanted the film to play in cinemas, and so I knew I had to make a film that you could sit there with your popcorn and you genuinely would be on the edge of your seat, literally. And so I feel as if I've learned how to. I think my natural, even if I was doing like a rom-com, I would find some way of shoehorning like tension or suspense into it. So I think that's my natural kind of wheelbase, you might say. So films like that are interesting. But what I'm very interested in doing is what I'd call sort of mashups. What might be otherwise a conventional action film, but then putting this kind of more breathable, one might call sort of like almost like European noir, Euro noir type of kind of intensity and broodiness, which is not just bam 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 action film. It's got something a bit more cerebral to it. So I think if I can find a midpoint where it's got a really strong narrative, so it's got that kind of action or element, but there's a lens on it which makes it a little bit more introspective and a little bit more thoughtful. A film like Prisoners, or a film like Sicario, amazing films like that could just be action films, but they do something more. Those are kind of films that I tend to gravitate towards that when I watch, and so yeah, I'm looking for things like that, I guess.
What's your best film you've seen recently?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's all the usual suspects. Parasite was fantastic. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, what I just described, it had that. It wasn't just boom, 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 boom. He really takes his time, and it slowly dawns on you. Oh, this is, and there's some amazing sequences in there. 1917, it impacted me in a way. I thought, it was going to be a very technically proficient film, but actually, I remember thinking about it and about war and young men, and it was good. I watched Ford versus Ferrari. Kind of enjoyed that. In terms of recent films, yeah, and my brain's starting to shut down. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, even though we had some technical issues.
Yes.
It's been really good and a privilege to chat to you. I'm looking forward to see what you do next.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's like your show, and my wife has been watching your reviews for the films and kind of liked,
Oh, really? Okay.
intense reviews is great. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much.